Homelessness remains one of the most pressing social issues in America. Service providers are housing more people than ever before. However, the work has been underfunded for decades. But what if we could change that? A new study from the University of Pennsylvania and the National Alliance to End Homelessness explores a crucial question. How much would it cost to provide housing and services to all households staying in homeless shelters?
Research from local programs from across the country indicates that people who participate in Housing First programs are very likely to stay housed in the long term. With additional funding for Housing First programs, every person experiencing homelessness can receive appropriate and timely housing assistance.
The study's findings are stark. Only 16% of households living in shelters are able to access Housing First programs. That is, programs that provide housing and supportive services to people experiencing homelessness. For those who access these programs, fewer than 5% return to homelessness. The challenge? Funding isn't meeting the demand, but the nation's success in rehousing veterans tells another story.
What we see is that because there's been such significant investment from the federal government in programs for veterans who are experiencing homelessness, basically about 50% of them, 50 to 60% of them, are able to access either supportive housing or rapid rehousing within a year of their experiencing homelessness. Whereas among the non-veteran population, it's much closer to about 10%.
So what would it cost to close this gap?
Each year, the federal government releases statistics on the population accessing emergency homeless shelters all across the United States. Our research team used this information to calculate how many Housing First placements the federal government would need to ensure every person experiencing homelessness would have a placement immediately open for them. We then estimate the annual cost of providing these placements.
In order to place everyone who accessed shelter into a Housing First program in 2022, the estimated cost would have been an additional $9.6 billion. In the 2024 fiscal year, HUD's budget was just over only $4 billion for homeless assistance grants.
However, with regard to veterans and homeless families, we were able to show that it would be, within reason that in 5 years, they could fund increases incrementally and cover the gap. For non-veterans, however, the gap is much, much larger, requiring essentially a tripling of spending, which is unlikely to happen through the discretionary budget process by which these programs are currently funded.
Failure to continue investing in Housing First would lead to a continuation of the status quo. Hundreds of thousands of people experiencing homelessness every single year. Worse yet, federal budget cuts would undermine the most effective response to homelessness: Housing First programs like rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing. Millions of households can only afford housing because of federal housing assistance. Removing this funding would likely lead to widespread evictions and homelessness.
The bottom line? The Housing First approach works, but without full funding, it can't reach those who need it most.
The main takeaway is that the federal government's Housing First approach is working, but it is not funded to the extent that it needs. Fully funding Housing First would give us the best opportunity yet of resolving the country's problem of homelessness.